Okay, good morning everybody. Today I actually have somebody who actually wanted to know how to apply the dForce modifier to clothing. So I thought I will make a short tutorial in order to showcase that, since it's quite hard to do that in text form. Okay, so first you import the clothing. Okay, so in this case, it is something I've already done and released already, so I'll just go through quickly how to get that part set up. Okay, so just give me a minute. Okay, so first, as usual, you load the Genesis, whichever generation. In this case, it will be Genesis 8. So I have this one set up for use with my conversions, so it doesn't have a head and all that. Just wait for it to load. When you have too many settings, it takes forever. Alright. Okay, so Genesis 8. Then next you want to import in the whatever clothing. In this case, it's a Rapunzel's dress, which I've already released. So this is basically just me doing additional work. Okay, so in this case, I'll just do a transfer tool to transfer the rigging from the figure to the dress. Okay, so if you are dealing with dForce, you don't need to worry so much about the deformation in the dress. If you're not dealing with dForce, then you will have to deal with the dress deformation. In this case, like for example, you have a dress stretching out like that, which looks very ugly, but in dForce it doesn't matter. Okay, next you take the dress and then you apply dForce to it. So in this case, go to the simulation setting, the options, under dForce, add modifier, dynamic surfaces. Okay, so if you run it like that, it should work perfectly well, because this model is actually pretty much set up for dForce already. Not to say it's specifically that, but I modified it in before I import it, so you can run the simulation and it should work without any issue. But in this case, the tutorial is for how to apply. So next we go to create with the clothing set, with the clothing mesh selected. Go to create dForce modifier weight node. Okay, so you can put in whatever name you want here. I usually leave it as default, and that doesn't really matter. Okay, so with the dForce modifier weight node selected, under tools setting, in the node weight brush tool, okay, you have a dForce simulation influence weight. So add that map, you see the entire thing turn red. Okay, so what this basically means is that the dForce is applied to the entire model. So what you want to do this time is to right click anywhere within the viewport, okay, and go to geometry selection, select all. This is selecting all the meshes, and then you go to weight editing, same thing, right click, weight editing, fill selection, and 0%. Okay, so this will get rid of all the influence on the dForce throughout the entire clothing. Okay, the reason why you want to do that is so that it does not affect parts that you do not want it to be affecting. Okay, then I'm sorry. Then you select the part that you want to be affected by dForce. In this case, it's the skirt. Okay, so I'll just do a rough selection, and then hold Control and the plus keypad button in order to increase the selection to somewhere around here. Okay, the general rule of thumb, right, is that you will select the entire part that you want to be moving, want it to affect by dForce, and then remove some parts of it. So in this case, maybe about 4 squares or 4 meshes. So if you go to the wireframe, you should be able to see. Okay, so I want this entire part to be affected, so I'm remove about 4 or so. Okay, then right click, weight editing, fill selection, and fill it, and then increase again to where you previously had it. Right click, weight selection, smooth selected. Okay, this is my setting. I'm not sure about the default. I've been using this for so long, I can't remember what's the default numbers anymore. Okay, so you just accept. So it will smoothen out the selection in this manner, right? Okay, so after this, that's done already. So you can save your dress to whatever you want, apply the textures and save your dress and whatnot. In this case, you might also want to throw in a smoothing. Okay, so then you can pose your figure. I'll just do a random pose, something that has a raised leg that I can use to deform. Maybe say something like that. Sorry, something like that. Okay, so then you run the simulation to test out and see if it's actually working. Also another word of advice is that if your mesh is too low poly, you might not get the result you want. So try your best to get your mesh as high poly as your computer can handle. That doesn't make it explode. So in this case, even though this model comes from Kingdom Hearts, which is a PS4 game, I actually had to subdivide it about twice in order to get the proper mesh density for it to deform properly, dForce properly, right? Because if it's just the default mesh density, it actually there's actually quite a lot of poke through, because there's actually 2 meshes involved in this particular dress. One is the outside pink color, and there's an inner dress of white color as well. So it's not really visible here, but if I apply the texture, right, you'll be able to see that. And if it's the original, then it will just poke through. The white color part will poke through. So make sure your mesh has enough polygons for it to deform properly, right? So yeah, so in this case it's working pretty much as expected, more or less. So of course there are also other ways to simulate this if you're going to use timeline and whatnot, but this is just a simple test, so I'm not going to bother with all that. Just let it run and make sure that it's working all nice and proper, so that will work well for me. Right, so seems like it's going well. So this is the basics of how to get the dForce clothing applied to your clothing, to to your mesh. So if you notice down here, there's a little bit poke through, which actually is to do with the leaks and all that. So yeah. Okay, so that's how you go about it. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.